And hailing from parts unknown, we are Bob Chipman, Kurt D. Norman, and Dr. Daniel Gronsky. We are the greatest educational tag team in the world today. We are the excellence of education. We are the Elucidators. Seriously, I would like to thank all of you guys for coming out tonight. We are thrilled to be the final panel of the inaugural run of the Music and Gaming Educational Symposium, MAGES. We can't believe that's what we actually did for. It's an accident.
It is an accident.
Seriously, you guys have been so great to us this year. We don't do this without your support. There is no MAGES without you guys. There is no MAGFest without you guys. So please give yourselves a round of applause. Now, what we're here to talk about actually is gaming as a narrative medium. And the thing is, I love stories. And I'm probably not the only one. You guys like stories? I love stories. I can't get enough stories. And where I get my stories from mostly actually is video games. Some people go to books, some people go to movies, and I do like books, and I do like movies. But I love video games. I love stories of video games. And I'm kind of curious about what it is that makes a video game right for storytelling. Because early video games really weren't.
That actually makes sense. I mean, I think that it's crazy. I mean, we all know that some of the early games, you know, they didn't have the story at the front end, but I mean, I don't think that any of us could think of a more epic storyline than Pong. In any case.
Live from your way. But
would you like to tell us an epic story of Pong? I think I'd like to hear it.
I think when I was a kid, I probably played about a 3.5-hour game of Pong once. Great. Yeah, that was an awesome story. That is also the best story I've ever told.
No, and also, you know, the first game had a story. Well, no, what was the first video game called? What did, come on, someone knows. Shout it out.
Asteroids.
Someone's got it. Well, there are different opinions on which one counts. Usually the mark gets to be Space War.
Yeah.
Which is there. Now, Space War has a story. It's right there in the title. You have a location, and you have a thing that's happening. There is a war in space. Now, I'm not being funny about that. That's true. It's telling you right there. You immediately know you are not standing in front of a computer. This is not a document program. It is in space, and there's a war on. Location, conflict. That's a story.
and you're absolutely right. But for me, one of the things that makes stories so compelling is characters. And we had to wait a long time for good characters. Mario, is that his first name or his last name? And now we know it's both, but we didn't know that at first. Let me tell you absolutely everything we know about Mega Man from Mega Man 1, because it's not in the game, it is in the game manual. Their very first near-human robot, Mega Man. And then later, resisting reprogramming, Mega Man is chosen the defender of the universe and its inhabitants. That's it, that's what we got. He is a guy, he shoots stuff.
Wow.
And he scrolls down the right.
For me, I don't know about you, for me, characters is what makes the story come alive. Especially in a long-form media like a game. You look at a short-form media like a movie, sometimes, not always, sometimes they can get by on other stuff. And characters you think, they're not great characters, but I like the plot, or I like what I was looking at. In the games, you live with these guys a long time, and you have to get to know them. And they're basically three metrics by which I sort of decide whether or not I like a character as a good character. Relatability, consistency, and whether the character is static or dynamic. Let me tell you what I mean by those. Relatability, likability. How much like you or how much like something you want to be. Because some characters remind us of ourselves, right? Those are pretty cool, and it's nice to see yourself reflected in the character, and that's a big part of a lot of like the political stuff gender in gaming, race in gaming that we've been discussing here at NAGFest this year and years past too. That's a big deal for people. They want that little man on the screen to be them.
Unless you look like Blanca, in which case I probably don't want you to remind me of that.
That's a hurtful topic for many people.
I don't know, Blanca's pretty awesome. I'll get with it.
The other thing, though, is, you know, it could be a character that's not like you, but it's how like you want to be. A lot of people play fighting games, not because they're good at Kung Fu, but they kind of like the fantasy that they are good at Kung Fu. And so that they can learn to be Ryu, they can learn to be Ken, and they can learn to be Blanca, and they can make believe they can be Ken. And the thing is, you know, you look at how much the character is like you, and I will tell you a couple characters. One that hits really hard for me that I think is a character I'd like to be like is Professor Layton, in the Professor Layton series. And that is the character, it's a puzzle game. It's a damn puzzle game. And Professor Layton, you learn so much about this guy. How many of you played Professor Layton in the Unwound Future? You learned his entire tragic backstory. If you have not played Professor Layton in the Unwound Future, leave. Stop listening. Why are you listening to me? You could be playing Professor Layton. Go, get it. And that was really hard for me. But on the other hand, I look at a character like Titus from Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X did very, very well. People like Final Fantasy. Raise your hand if you like Final Fantasy X.
Be honest, you can't see most of your
It's
faces.
fine. I didn't like Final Fantasy X. That's an opinion. That's not a fact. That's because I didn't relate to Titus. I couldn't see myself in him. I couldn't see something I wanted to be in him.
Titus did annoy me in that game.
But that's not his fault. That is the voice actor.
Everybody can Titus laugh right now.
It's amazing how we can all do that. Another thing I like to look at is consistency of character, because characters can change. We'll talk about that in a second, static versus dynamic. But do their actions all seem like they make sense? They're being made by the same guy. Who here played Final Fantasy IV? Okay, quite a few of you. Cecil is one of my favorite protagonists, and Cecil makes some big changes. Not much of a spoiler, in fact, it's very early on in the game. He's a Dark Knight who becomes a Paladin. It's a big.
What's a paladin?
It's a big radical change, but it makes sense. It's a development in a character arc so that his decision seems like it's being made by the same guy. How many of you guys played L.A. Noire? About the same amount of people. I keep thinking about the same amount of people.
I saw LA Noir sales figures and I don't believe that.
Cole Phelps, the main protagonist of that, he's a lunatic. Nothing he does makes sense. He moves in 5 directions at once. And the troubled development history of that game, absolutely, there are reasons for this. There are external reasons for this. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because why the I have a shitty story with this guy I don't like and his actions don't make any sense.
I want to thank you for not using the L word in the middle of all that.
Which would be?
Ludonarrative dissonance. And now that I've said it, no one else has to.
I don't think that was going to be a problem, Bob.
Wonderful.
Why do you remind me of that works?
The L word is an entertaining series from Showtime. No, the L word. The L word is when the gameplay and what we're told of the story conflict with one another, which someone 2 years ago decided was a big enough problem that it needed its own phony academic-sounding name with a made-up word that never existed before.
As someone who reads way too many academic publications, that sounds like one of those words. You're like, that's not a real word. Oh, no, it totally is. It's stop.
Aaron Signaler 20-sided.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of character was just about static characters and dynamic characters. Because you can actually have good characters both ways. The static character is one who always stays the same. He's the same at the beginning of the story, he's the same at the middle of the story, he's the same at the end of the story. A dynamic character is one who goes through big changes, like Cecil in Final Fantasy IV, like other characters. I said Cecil's one of my favorite protagonists. Probably my absolute favorite protagonist is from Tales of the Abyss with Tom Favreau.
Yeah!
And he has a radical awakening about a third of the way into the game. Lots of stuff changes. He grows and develops as a character. For one reason, I love him. It's a great game. If you've not played Tales of the Abyss, I cannot recommend it highly enough. But actually, when I was thinking about putting this panel together, I was thinking about characters. Who's a good character? The one that popped into my mind immediately is a static character. It's from an older game. The name of the character is Galleon. Has anyone played Lunar the Silver Star? Lunar 2. Alright, you need to play Lunar 1. This is important. Because Galleon, I have never in my life hated a character. I've never hated an actual living person as much as I did Galleon. Boom, Galleon! It's the good kind of hate. It's the kind of hate that makes narrative sense and drives the story and makes you want to kill this guy. Because, and this is, I will tip this one. Galleon never believes in you as a protagonist. He never thinks that you are ever going to be a threat to him. It's not a spoiler to tell you he's the villain. You meet him and you're like, oh geez, that guy's the villain. It's a secret from the character, but not from you. And he never believes it. And there is nothing you do that changes his mind. He's completely static. He is as convinced of his rightness at the beginning of the game as he is after you have stabbed him to death. His dying words are a taunt. And
You're not selling me on this being a bad character. I'm not being honest.
I'll say that this is a bad character. This is a great character, but he is a completely static character. He undergoes no change over the course of this narrative.
Play Lunar 2.
He is the villain.
Everybody doesn't start off.
That's a complicated enough question. I don't want to answer it because I'd rather you play the game and I don't want to spoil it. But he is a completely static character. He does not change in attitude, in demeanor, in bearing at any point during the game. I see a hand in the back there.
Yeah. Have you played Suikoden 2?
I have not played Suikoden 2, and I've heard very, very good things about the Suikoden series, and I've never gotten a chance to get into it.
Because there's one villain in that game, though, is the character I despise the most. And because I despise him more than any other villain in other games, that's what makes him interesting and memorable. But I don't want to get into any details if you didn't see that. Just wonder if you played it, what are your thoughts?
Okay, another question?
You know the game The World Ends With You?
I do know the game.
Yeah. You say Neku is a dynamic or like static character?
Ooh, that is. I got to tag out on that one. You want to take this one, Kurt?
I would argue that Neku is a static character for about the first 4 days. And then I believe he changes. And I believe that he's very, very slowly becomes, he loses that staticness. But definitely when the game starts and as the game builds, that is a static character.
You make a good point, and I can't disagree with that. That is a guy whose big moment of truth is very late in the game, which is sort of funky as a narrative. Because here's the thing about the World War II. Here's my thing about the World War II. I love the game. I think the game is a ton of fun. I would recommend it to anyone. I would actually recommend it to any 2 people because there's so many people who need to play it right. But the story didn't move me. It's not at the top of my list for narrative. And that's one of the reasons is it's really hard to get into the character of Neku. Really late.
Yeah, the more I think, as much as I love that game, as much as I love that narrative, the more I think about it, I don't know which does really stick out in my head as a narrative that I think is the best.
Could it be a cultural divide right there, though?
I don't know.
I'm going to say no, at least for me, because I love that crazy Japanese shit.
But that's the thing, though, is to the culture that game was pitched at, the Akira youth culture, it's not crazy Japanese.
No, it's perfectly logical.
It's these sensible parts of their lives.
I mean, I'm
Well,
not
the
saying
anime fantasy version is sensible parts of their lives.
I've logged over 200 hours in that game, so
There you go.
I mean, it's.
Question? You got a question? Yes?
So, can you have a game then that's got great characters and great story, but it's still kind of a crappy game?
stories.
I don't think the JRPG genre would survive if people stopped playing bad games because they had stories that they liked.
We have another question in the Dr. Who shirt.
Well, I was just gonna say that example of a game that had a pretty good story, but then like really not so solid mechanics. Alpha Protocol.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it had a really good, it did more with its varied plots in one game than Mass Effect did in the trilogy. But the mechanics was very lackluster and shot.
I would actually argue that this may get people mad at me, but I would actually argue that Planescape Torment.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because the game, whenever I play that game, I'm incredibly frustrated by terrible mechanics, bad design, and it's built on a D&D edition that is already clunky and bad, and then more iterated and more clunky and bad UI design. But the story is fantastic.
Baldur's Gate 2.
We have a very patient and terribly threatening ghost in the back corner who would like to ask a question.
They killed me. Clearly, I have to do something right every now and then. So actually, I think a really good example and reply to this notion of can a game be good or can a game be bad, even if it has good stories and good characters, is kind of Final Fantasy franchise. Not all of them, but there are at least some incarnations where the story and the character is compelling, but people complain all the time about the gameplay. I really like
Final Fantasy 2
Final
is really a good example of that. And I was talking with somebody here yesterday about that very game. It's got a great, rich, engaging story. And the gameplay itself, how many people have played Final Fantasy 2?
Well,
Japanese or English?
Japanese too.
Okay.
The actual second game of the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah.
The gameplay, the core mechanic for that is so fundamentally broken. To gain hit points, you need to win a battle with very few hit points, and it will reward you with more. So you need to get super close to death without dying. It's frustrating and hard, and you have to hit your own guys. It's kind of nuts, but it's a great story if you can make it through that.
Every couple of years, someone tries that thing where the weaker you get, the stronger your attacks are, and it's never once worked.
It sounds like it's a good idea, but it's never a good idea.
It should be. It's like a Sharknado thing. Oh, I got a tornado in your pants. I got a great film here, but no, you don't.
Might as well just Ghost Shark anyways.
Ghost Shark is the shit. It's no Sharktopus.
Purple?
Yes, it is. It's a movie that is fantastically terrible, but it's awesome.
Go Wave Shark.
There's a shark in the first half.
It's exactly what it says on the label.
It's a ghost shark. You're anywhere. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
All right, right there.
I had actually a question about narratives where the protagonist has incidental or kind of no impact on the larger plot and kind of the role in that. The thing I was thinking of is, I'm a huge fan of the Toho franchise, and it's kind of an anti-plot in the sense that with most kind of JRPGs, your characters go through the trouble of saving the world. That's a kind of easy task, you use the same tactics and the bosses die pretty easily. The Toho franchise, you go through an exorbitant amount of trouble only to find out that nothing really happens and your characters really did nothing at all. Everything that happens happens.
So it's a lot like our individual lives.
Everything that happens happens in spite of the characters' interactions, not because of them. And yeah, you go through a lot of trouble for nothing. But the same idea is, an arc in the story does kind of happen eventually, but your character is involved, but they're not active participants. Does that go against that kind of ideal of seeking empowerment through fantasy, or can that work?
I've never heard of this, and now I want to. I love this. Zelly Cross the Dragon Quest. Fantastic.
I want to say that it does kind of go against what I'm looking for in a play experience, because I want to play as the one guy in the world whose actions do matter. Because it was a joke before, but so many times in our daily lives we do feel that grind, right? We get up, we go to school, we go to work, we do stuff we don't want to do. We come home, we eat a bland meal, and we go to bed. In between the bland meal and the going to bed, I like to pretend I'm somebody who really matters. Everything is depending on this guy not dying. And if he does die, I can restart it and make him not die this time. That fantasy is a big part of the appeal to me.
So what you're saying is that, like, life is like trying to level up in Final Fantasy?
I have made the metaphor that your party in any RPG is like tending an actual garden. So if any of you are homeowners, you could just get an actual garden instead, and in the spring you'll have fruit. All right, back row, I think I'm waving.
Yes. I want to ask this question. So talk about the Mass Effect series, and I'm a big fan of them. I think that the story is very good. But I want this thing right here, the narrative writing. I just wonder, is it possible to have a game, so set like in the Mass Effect series, that doesn't have like this huge overarching evil or something like that, that evil type of thing, but you go along the day-by-day stuff, like something like out of like Deep Space Nine or Babylon 5, like you go on treaties or go to, you know, what have you. If you go guns blazing, there's a consequence to that. Like the guys you save or, they betray you or something like that. So, that sort of thing.
Doesn't that sound so refreshing?
And I would say that there are newer games. There's not a lot, but I think that's a developing trend in some of the stuff I've seen. Is the idea for smaller scale, but still consequences that matter.
Yeah,
and those consequences definitely, I think are part of what makes games such a good medium for narrative. Because you get the immediate sense of those consequences. Sometimes, a game like the most recent Fire Emblem, life or death. If your guy dies on the field, he's done. He doesn't come back. You've got to work around that. The plot can change because he is gone. You failed him. And that's a big deal. In a movie or a book, I mean, you can pull the same trick, but it doesn't always have the same resonance because it wasn't you that killed that guy, it was the author. And you can still get invested in that narrative, but that extra element of you pulling the strings can be a big draw for games.
But can that make money or what have you? Because some would say, I like to have a big nuanced threat. We're used to that. We're used to having a big nuanced threat coming in, shooting a blaze, or what have you. But as right now, if someone did make a game, a AAA game like that, I don't think even if it was marketed right, I don't think it sells big.
No one wants Harvest Moon.
This whole matchup, this whole AAA indie thing has been a real dominant thread through all the major panels, through half the brain space panels. I don't want to get too deep into it now, but it's a conversation we need to keep having.
Has anyone seen the game? It just came out. I think it's still in beta. It's by Double Fine, and it's about operating your own space station. Yeah. Or no. Yeah. Yeah, it's similar in ways as yes, I have that game. Yeah. No, that was broken. This is the second game. And they basically announced to put it up for download.
Blue Jack.
First, an example of something with smaller scale that big impactors, Papers, Please. It is basically you operating a station where...
I know that one by reputation full thing, but yeah. But I would definitely say that you're
also on the same note, where the back the bit where it's a game that is not about power, but about making you small and meaningless. There are actually some very popular games about that. They're all about making you feel small.
Yeah, but I don't think Little League is, because I didn't know how to try to learn to be a writer.
I'm kind of like Brown Forty in that because one of the big things that I also wanted to talk about was control. And the way I get there from what you just said is the original Resident Evil game, where they gave you tank control. They deliberately took away your power of control to try to generate this feeling of suspense and dread. And
That's what I say when my controls don't work out as well.
I say lots of stuff, none of them fit for a room that has young children in it. And the thing is, if you are gaming, forget if you're a game maker. If you are an author of any narrative in any medium, you want to be pulling all the strings. If I'm writing, I want you to feel this way. This is what I'm going for. If you feel a different way, I feel like I screwed up. And control is funky to work around because control is all about letting you do whatever the hell you want to do. I should be able to jump this building. No, you shouldn't. I'm the author and I say you shouldn't. And it sort of makes this kind of wall between us. It's an ancient joke. It was on Penny Arcade like 13 years ago. I'm not even kidding. It was about Shenmue, which is a very early sandbox game. I must avenge my father's death right after I play with these toys and pet this kitten and go on these rides. And the whole idea that there's supposed to be this grand story that you can just screw around for as long as you feel like, which sort of defeats that author's intent, but you don't want to do all that stuff. You want to pet the kitten. So it's a problem that you can work around, but there's sort of a trick in getting you to do what I want you to do.
Yeah, it's interesting the way, some games the story forces you along, the narrative forces you along, and in others you basically create, well, you don't necessarily create your own narrative, but you create how that narrative works.
But the save the world thing is popular because it's easy. It's the easiest possible way to make people care about what the result of the story is going to be.
It's the highest possible stake.
The whole world is at stake. If you are a good writer or even a marginally gifted storyteller, spinner of tales or whatever, you can make any situation feel like the end of the world. But it's easier to just say, no, if you don't get up the stairs, it's the end of the world.
And it's actually, was anybody here for my panel on Control last year? Okay, 2 people. Actually, put your hands back up. Everybody look at those people. Those people are super, super rad, and you can never be more like them. I spent a whole hour with a bunch of people talking about this very same control issue and how can you work around it. And the sort of thing we kind of decided was that the best thing to do is if you have to put a limit on what a player can do in terms of control, it should make sense. Tank controls in Resident Evil are bullshit. I'm sorry, they are. You want
At the time, it was brilliant.
Limitation that makes sense and feels natural to you as the player. And that's a lot easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. Right there.
Sort of the same world thing. I wanted to ask a question about narrative as a truly optional device that changes the story of the game completely if you invest in it. I like to turn something like Mass Effect, where you can ignore all the side quests and go to the game, and you'll still get the
Metroid
story.
Prime?
No. We're going to play Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dark Souls is a game that looks like, at first, it's a standard save the world story. If you explore nothing in it, it will be a save the world story. But the more you look into a story like Dark Souls, you don't have to search for this story. It never tells you this story once. You have to look through item text, talk to NPCs, and make tons of inferences. The game is one of the deepest and richest stories if you can find it. And the more you find out about it, the more you realize you are no hero and the world is an awful great place where no one wins.
It's an Atlas game, so yes, that is true. He says the exact same thing about Metroid Prime, where the story isn't covered with your visor. You scan all kinds of different stuff and it gives you the whole story of this. Or you can not scan anything, blow through it, and kill Metroids.
If you want to discover just how bland Metroid's universe actually is, you can find it.
You love the story of Metroid Prime? What can I tell you?
You talk about characters, that's enough. Yeah.
Might as well.
Now I feel important. You are. So we talk a lot about characters, how they're heroes, and everyone wants to save the princess, defeat the third Reich, and then colonize the next solar system because well, it makes them feel special and like a hero. What about games that you're not a hero, you're an anti-hero, or you're a hero person? Like the example I would use is Spec Ops: The Line. As you go through, you realize you're committing war crimes and atrocities, and you're chasing ghosts.
And the funny thing is that that's a game with a lot of, and I full disclosure, I've not played it. I know about it. There's another one I know by reputation. I'm low at first-person shooters. I am 2/3 of the way through the Last of Us right now, so I don't want to talk about that. No spoilers. I am terrible at it. I've died more times than I can count. Fortunately, the game counts for you, so I can look it up.
Mouse or controller?
Controller. On the PS3. I'm careful now. But the thing is, that's a game that it's got a lot of critical love. People are like, this is amazing. This is a game changer. And like a lot of people, not you, like people here love it. A lot of people out in the world are like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I feel bad about myself now, and I don't like that. Which is kind of. That's a weird thing to do in almost any medium, is to pull that trick on you. And you see it in movies, you see it in books. It's actually a narrative device called unreliable narrator.
I was actually just thinking about that because I found out, I was very sad when I found this out, how bad the reviews were for Deadpool, being a massive Deadpool fan.
It's great.
I know, well, fortunately, Steam has these fantastic things that they do. And I mean, that game is absolutely insane. I mean, the guy's running around with katanas, sneaking up on people, and it's fantastic. I mean, the guy is a total anti-hero. Running up, he'll chop someone's head off in their arms before he can play.
I'm actually going to question you about the Deadpool game as a slight sidetrack from what we're actually doing here. I love the Deadpool comics. I love the character. And the thing I love about the character, if you don't know the character, he is a funny mercenary guy who kills people, and also he hates himself and he wants to die.
Yep.
And the essence of all the comedy, or all the good comedy, stems from tragedy. As, if you study literature, you've probably heard that one before, right? Does the game deserve that?
So far, yes, definitely. But
he also talks about movies.
And you also get fantastic inner narrative and the multiple personalities and multiple voices in his head. So that's what's fun.
Well, that may be one I have to pick up.
If I may speak in defense of Spec Ops: The Line and The Last of Us, if they were always fun to play, how would we know there aren't?
No, you're not going to drag me into that one. I was, right before this panel, I was in the brain space having that conversation, so we're not doing it now. I'm calling a veto on that one. Girl with the goggles.
Okay, so going back to a lot of topics that we've covered, have you ever played Nier?
Yes.
Nier. That is a game that the game mechanics are kind of wonky. It doesn't seem to know what it wants to do. It's got two different protagonists, whether you play the Japanese game or the American game. The American version of you're a father trying to save his daughter in this world full of shadows, essentially. And if you play through it more than once, you get a completely different view of it. And it's the only game that I've ever played that gave me, and I quote, a depression boner. I've never been so happy to be sad in my life playing this game. So I've never played a game that the mechanics were terrible, but the storyline and the protagonist and everything about it was good. And the music, music in a video game is one of those rare things that drives along the story, because everyone kind of has their own soundtrack when they're listening to books or their own life. But never do you actually get a situation like a video game where you're given the soundtrack to the most epic moment you'll ever experience.
I would argue that you do
And also
get a
the villain.
similar situation with film, but the point is taken.
Yes.
Amnesia.
But like, what I'm saying about this is that Nier covers a lot of these things that we find integral to really great games, minus the gameplay.
Which is interesting because we did talk about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've never played Nier, and I'll tell you this right now, because I love narrative games so much, I played, if I'm not sinking 100 hours into it, it's not really worth our time. Which unfortunately means I don't play that many games. Certainly not as many as I'd like. I got a backlog at home as long as my arm, which I swear I'll get rid of. I swear I will. But no, I haven't played that one.
To ask, are we improper, the collective community, not just in general? Interchangeably, misusing as interchangeable narrative and story in this case.
You want to make a distinction?
Well, in the sense that all things have, anything has a narrative. Pac-Man has a narrative. He needs to get away from those little ghost guys. That's his narrative. Carter has a narrative. It's a game of text. That's a journey is a narrative. I walk up the stairs. That's a narrative. I don't necessarily know if it's a story, but it's a sequence of events.
Actually, I'm going to say that we're not misusing that because that's actually something I wanted to talk about also. Sort of narrative.
I'd like to do that.
Awesome. See, it's tag team lecturing. That's what we're doing here. It's a double team.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about sometimes the narratives that we kind of create on our own when we're playing games. And there's some, I mean, if you're looking at, let me look at my notes real quick. There are basically two kinds of player-created narratives. There's the little moments that you're just the author of. And I actually just said, I've been playing the last night. And part of the last night is not spoiled. You're sneaking up on a guy and you can hear him, and he's talking to a friend of his that's all around the fire. And the guy says to his friend, "No sign of those tourists." And as soon as he finishes that line, I put an arrow right through the back of his head. Woo! And I felt awesome. The best shot I made in that whole game, let me assure you. No sign of those tourists, won't dead. Like in a movie. I felt like a cinema director. And that was spectacular. But what I'm really interested in is sort of, if you're playing a story-like game, and one of the ones that I want to talk about actually is XCOM, which has a little bit of story, but it's not super deep, it's not super detailed. I started creating this little narrative in my own mind, filling the gaps there. And some games you look at are all gaps. You look at the early Mario games, and you're like, why is Bowser stealing the princess? We don't know. And then, there's all kinds of comedy bits about that. Why is Bowser stealing the princess? You can name a joke. And here's the thing, if you played any Paper Mario games, Nintendo's making the joke now. Why is Bowser stealing the princess? He doesn't know. It's just what he does. It's his hobby.
Presumably she's the only monarch in the area, so it's a political move. He does tend to take her back to the local and castle there, so there's things to be said for that.
And again, in the early game, that's your player-created narrative. You were filling in the blanks. Why the hell is this happening? Why am I jumping on turtles? What do turtles do to me?
They exist.
They exist, and that is answer enough.
They're stony, they're bad.
And you can't disagree with that. It's other equal by their 50 eyes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in XCOM, because I said I wanted to talk about XCOM, there is not a lot that we know about the guys in the squad what bringing together what they're doing. So I wound up creating this really elaborate story in my mind about who these guys were and where they came from. And we had this rule in my house. A guy was not an official member of the XCOM squad until he had survived a mission in the field. That was his probationary mission. He came back alive. We changed his haircut and hair color, gave him a stupid name. He was an official member of Xeno Command. Yes! But you have to learn it. Amen. And here's the thing. In the story, there's a guy that gets psychic powers, and he is important at the very end of the game. Now, my whole narrative wound up being about the very first guy who survived the mission in the game. You play the tutorial, there's one guy that comes home from that. He had survived, that's where I didn't do this on purpose, he survived about 3 legendary hero. The savior of countless battlefields, he had turned the tide single-handedly against the alien menace. And the fact that he did powers that made him the key player in the ending, I was unbelievably angry about it. That is not how my story ends. My story is this guy saves us. And it's weird because that was all me. I invented that. And I'm sure you guys can name games where you've done that too, right? Right there.
You know, Commander Shepard, I mean, my Shepard, well, first off, he's black.
Yeah, I kind of imagine that one's going to come up.
Yeah, I know. This is the only one it's the only, I'll be honest, only African American character that doesn't start out being arrested, but still. Progress, ladies
Well, except for the third game.
Yeah. You had to bring that up.
That happens if you don't like all females, so it's
true.
Minecraft or Skyrim or Starman are explicitly plugging into that.
They're asking you to create your own narrative. And again, Minecraft's another one I haven't played. I know I'm a bad person for not playing it, but I really don't have that kind of time. I lose myself.
I make up my own story in sandbox games as well. My character is almost always someone who's very, very frustrated that someone won't tell them what to do. Why am I here? What is this? Will someone please give me a fucking arrow?
Feel like experience.
Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
Tom Nook steals everything.
And at least I have something I know what I want to do.
Tom Nook, educating you on the dangers of capitalism.
That gentleman in the corner near the camera.
As far as directed narratives from the authors go, what strengths do you think video games have compared to other mediums? In particular, The Walking Dead does an incredible job of enhancing its story as opposed to as if you were just watching or reading it via gameplay.
Better than the show.
It is, though.
I think the big one is something that we mentioned before, which is that you're pulling the strings, so you're personally invested in this narrative. It's you doing this stuff, even if it was scripted a long time ago by somebody else, possibly in another country.
Well, yes, but The Walking Dead is a point-and-click adventure game. Can you think of other more gameplay-intense games that have attempted even something like bringing that together in such a strong way as The Walking Dead? Or do you think the best way to get directed narrative stories are going to be that sort of adventure game?
I would argue no. I mean, I personally think that one of the best directed adventure games recently has been Bioshock Infinite. Because of the fact that, you know, it is not that, and it's somewhat open-ended. You can choose to walk into a room and it's like a point. But once you kill the enemies in that room, yeah, that's it. And you move on in a forward path. But they do such a good job with, you know, pulling you in by using Elizabeth Jones, protagonist, or not protagonist, the other protagonist in a way. And I would argue that that does a fantastic job. I mean, so does the others.
Okay. Sometimes.
Sometimes. That's actually a really good question. What else do you think we can do to enhance the narrative? Because so many of those games, because even The Last of Us, which I am enjoying quite a bit actually, but it's move, kill guys, set piece that you don't control that is the story, move, kill some more guys. I don't feel so much like I'm directing that narrative, even though I am enjoying. And that's a really good question.
Games like that, you get the narrative and then you get the gameplay, and they're so very different from each other. A game one of the few games I've ever seen get interesting from Flash. The narrative is told with the game, and that really helps the story, and you have to look at the story.
You know, I don't think there's a magic trick to it. You know, when it comes to well, what can games do to have their stories and have their narrative? Like there's this keystone that hasn't been unlocked yet. They can suck less. I gave so much of a shit about what happened in Saints Row 4, and a point of that game is that the events don't matter and that your characters are just a bunch of morally degenerate assholes, but they're so well written, I actually gave a shit what happened to them. It's not a trick. Just hire talented writers, and they will fix this problem. You don't do that.
If you can marry good writing and good gameplay, I mean, you're right, it's not a magic trick, it's the most obvious solution in the world, but good luck pulling that off.
I feel like Tomb Raider had shitty stories for 25 years. And then they brought out a new Tomb Raider that had a pretty good one. And what's the difference? They hired John Pratchett to write it, who's an author, who's from a field that actually prizes decent storytelling out of, well, that's good enough. It's an
And I'm glad you just said that because, again, the whole point of this panel is what makes games a narrative medium. And part of the answer is, I mean, as a bit of a tautology, if you know what that word means something that just goes back and answers itself. What makes games a narrative medium is that we're trying to tell a story with them. So, I mean, that is an answer, believe it or not. In the lime green shirt back there.
All right, in games that are very linear, it seems like something you could kind of rely back on to make the game more interesting is that don't make the very end of the game the most climactic part of the game, but instead make the most climactic part of the game something that's optional. Like, what I think of is the Anju Cafe side quest in Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask is pretty straightforward. I mean, that you get to the ending, it's pretty exciting, but there's something more. There's some sense of mystery in the game, and that side quest really just ties it all together.
I would say that what you're talking about there is, I'm not sure that it's more climactic, that side quest, but the main quest is fun and it's for the biggest possible stakes, but there's not a lot of heart to it. That side quest has heart for miles. You feel that. You invest in it. You care about those characters. In a big way, you don't care about the what's his face?
The Skull Kid.
The Skull Kid, who is responsible for this. He's in the way. You care about him. You do care about. I'm sorry, it's been so long since I played Majora's Mask. I don't remember the character names, but you do care about them and what happens to them.
I think one of the interesting things that I've been seeing in games recently is that, DLC is something that can go in a very bad or a very good direction. So we've had, DLC for a lot of different games now, and it seems like you cannot have a new game come out that does not have DLC attached to it. So I think what do you all think about, let's say, beating a game like BioShock, and then you're not floating in the air anymore. You're suddenly underwater. You're suddenly in Rapture. You're suddenly trying to figure out how Eve and salts are the same, and how Biggers and plasmas are the same.
I think DLC can work if you're going for an episodic style, but you have to lower the price of the main product.
Yeah, exactly. So like Freedom's Pride, I think they did a good job.
That's an interesting thing that you went right to price point and purchasing because games aren't great. As much as we like them to be, they are not. And I think we do all want a complete narrative within. If we're buying a game for a narrative, we want a complete narrative for the money we put down on the counter when we walk in GameStop. If we get home, we're like, for another $20, you can actually find out how it is. They're going to be pissed, right? I would be so angry. Not only would I not buy the ending to the game I've already bought, never buy anything from those people again.
Well, then you must have not liked the 2008 version of Prince of Persia, then.
I played the first one in that cycle, which is from, I do not know.
It's 360. It's the 360 version.
The one after the Sands of Time series.
Yes, and they actually had DLC that you had to buy to finish the game. And here's the best part of it, boys and girls, that the DLC that was supposed to finish the game doesn't even finish the game. It just continues.
You knew it wouldn't, didn't you?
Yeah.
Didn't you really?
You knew what this was.
If you pay $20 for the ending, trust me, there's another $20 ending behind it.
And they left it incomplete. They just said, screw it, the world ends in darkness or what have you. That's it. The end.
Which Prince of Persia?
And they all went home.
2008.
Everyone dies.
think games can do to convey a proper narrative in a better fashion that can already be done in books or movies?
No, that they get better is really the sticking point there. I don't know if they necessarily can. I'm not sure in a lot of ways, I'm not sure if books and movies tell a better narrative than, say, cave painting. If you knew all the nuance of the cave painting. That might have been a really engrossing story about a haunted, who lived, who died, what happened. I don't know because I don't have access to whatever was going on there. Can games do better than books or movies? I think games can do as good as books and movies in their own way. Again, I hate to keep harping on the same point. I think the fact that you are in control is a big, big thing for them. I think whenever we analyze, I said I didn't want to get into games as our thing, but when we talk about games as art, we're always talking about outside of games.
I was just going to say, you know, it's funny. When I feel like playing a game, I'm playing a game. When I feel like reading a book, I read a book. When I want to watch a movie, I watch a movie.
That's true, and you do get a different urge at different times. And all I was going to say is, when we talk about games as art, we always talk, well, how does it look, or what kind of story does that? We're in here in a narrative panel, and everybody goes, oh, it's art because it has a good story. But games have controls, and that should be part of the discussion, at least, I think. So I hate to give you an answer that I already gave you earlier, but that's my answer.
Nobody ever gave a Pulitzer to a choose your own adventure book.
Maybe they should have. The idea that they like a story that seems like it is taking place inside a bigger world. Like there are other people in this story, they have things going on that are important to them. We don't necessarily find out what those are. And I would agree with that. I like stories like that. I actually have to go to a film for my frame of reference for that. Has anybody in here seen the movie End of Watch? Only a couple of you. It's on Netflix if you ever want to check it out. It's an interesting movie. Another one thing is it's a good movie, but it's a very interesting movie. But one of the things I really like about it is all the supporting characters seem like they have things going on in their lives. We never find out what they are, really. We get hints and bits and pieces, but it feels like a bigger world that we're watching a small part of. And I think the idea that games can do that, games can absolutely do that. Games can do that probably much, much better than a movie, because you don't have to hire an actor to come in for days worth of shooting for stuff that's not going to go anywhere for them necessarily. So I would agree with that.
I'll say nothing makes me roll my eyes harder at having at the amount of work I'm about to do than turning on any game within the last 5 years that at some point tells me in the first act that someone scattered a book all around the place, and then to find out what's going on.
You gotta who is scattering all these things, by the way?
Please fetch who knows? You gotta fetch all the pieces of the Constitution, find all the little things, and then you will find out what completely arbitrary thing was happening in the background. Just tell me who the bad guy is. I've got very little time.
It's the journey, they would say. It's the journey.
I feel it's a bit of a cheat, to be honest with you. And I won't say that I don't like those games. I'm, again, going to go back to The Last of Us. I'll finish with it. I am enjoying the story, but I definitely, you are on some, how many of you are playing or have played The Last of Us? That's the than I thought, actually. That is a game where you are in a hallway. And they do a really, really good job with their art assets of hiding that hallway from you. It looks like you can go places and do things when you are on the halls. You go from here, you go to there. And there's one way to get there, and you will go that way. I mostly don't mind, but all the story is likewise a hallway. You walk down that hallway and there's story. And then you walk down the next hallway and you kill the guys that are in that hallway. And you get more story. And I like the story, but it's a cheat. I want to feel like I've earned the story. And I'm not completely opposed to cutscenes. Although I feel that let's see what you guys think. I feel that as technology improves, that's a crutch that we need less and less.
I could not disagree I fucking love cutscenes. Because you can tell a story with anything. Certain stories are best told a certain way. For example, Dracula. Who has actually sat down and read the book Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Much of it.
Okay. Bram Stoker's Dracula the book exists as a series of letters and correspondence. If you did that as the Dracula movie, the movie would be shit. Because it would just be pieces of paper being held up to the screen, someone narrating and then going down. It would be boring. That's why in the movie they pick someone that is the star of the movie and they go through the Dracula adventure. And the thing about cutscenes is if we're going to have like I don't need cutscenes in all games. Like on Call of Duty, for example, I am perfectly fine with getting the story in the form of the guy barking in my ear, telling me where to go, because that is the story. But if you're going to have this big, epic, cinematic story, I love BioShock to death. I hate that BioShock does the thing where something that is a movie is happening around you. There's staging, there's plotting, there's places that it will look better to, but they force me to figure out where I'm going to look. No, just cut away from that. Give me a cutscene, use all this, give me some beautiful movie-like thing, and if I want to skip it, I will skip it. But I still remember being back in the 80s watching, the panels click by in Ninja Gaiden and thinking, oh, this is such a better way to do this than just loading it all in the manual and letting me go. So good Lord, cutscenes forever. Yes, the longer the better.
On the other hand, I think I wouldn't respond to that, Rushmore. I apologize. Because one of the things that I like in some recent Tales games is instead of having a big instead of having a big cutscene before the boss fights, what they actually do is you start fighting and they're talking to each other while you fight, which feels very organic, like something that would happen. It feels like watching a movie in the sense that the action and the dialogue are taking place at the same time. I am controlling the fight that's happening. And I like feeling like an active participant in, the game.
Well, I can get behind that. I'm talking more about when they have people walking around the room and talking to each other. In real life, walking around the room and talking to each other is boring. Even if it's the most dramatic thing in the world to you.
You heard it here first, guys. We are boring.
Well, and not being able to participate would probably be bored just because it would be a statically shot or whatnot. That's why when they do it in The Godfather, most of that, The Godfather, great movie, most of it is old Italian guys sitting in chairs telling each other who is about to get shot off screen. It's exciting as hell because they put the camera in these angles that emphasize this is a low-angle shot. It means that there's an emotion going on. This over here, look at the way that Al Pacino's face is juxtaposed big in the frame, the front of small, implying that he's become a godlike figure, consuming his essence. It is this important thing that is done with cinematic staging, and if you can do that in the game, and that will make the character better, please, for the love of fucking God, do it, is where I stand on that.
I was going to say too that I love a game with a good intro, obviously. So, when Witcher 2 came out with its Deluxe Edition, that video is astounding. It's amazing. So, yeah, I agree. I like to see cutscenes when they're tastefully put throughout the game, and they're not that long.
Also a good point, because I think the days of the 20-minute cutscene are well behind us.
I hope so.
Or at least we'd like to believe that. We are running shy on time, so I'm going to take 3 more questions. Who wants it the most? 3! Who really wants it the most? My wife wants it the most, and she's my wife.
I want to know what you guys think about games that tell separate narratives within one game. Things that have multiple endings. We have a good ending, or a bad ending, or the super awesome ultimate mega ending. So
The green ending or the blue ending.
I'm actually going to respond to that with a completely different game. No More Heroes. Has 2 endings. The quote good ending is elaborate. There's story. There's an extra fight in it. It's all right. The bad ending, you're on the crap where some dude kicks down the door and kills you. And then it plays the Star Wars theme. And it is incredible. And I laugh, I'm like, that's the ending. That's what happened.
Yeah, I know, right? Too bad there's no sequel.
Did he die by the laser sword?
As he lived, yes.
Yes.
But
And I don't know, sometimes.
I've seen movies do it. I don't know why games can't.
It's like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, well, like Clue, right?
Yeah, Clue has multiple endings.
They make it work.
There's who's heard of Mr. Sardonicus? There's a movie. It's a horror movie. I won't go into the elaborate plot. That actually, when they played it in theaters, had multiple different endings. And a character would come out and say, "Well, that's one interesting way that it could have happened. But what if it happened this way?" And then you get the bad ending. And then the guy comes back again. You know, that's good, but I'm a justice kind of guy, so here's my favorite ending. And you get together. I mean, movies are allowed to do it. I think games can do it. Why not?
I think games can pull it off, but not always.
Well, it's hard because you can end up writing the narrative in such a way that it cheapens it. That if it's made to end a whole bunch of ways, it doesn't have an actual resonant meaning.
Although the one that's interesting is 999, which was for the DS. And that it's a picture book. It's not really a game in too many places. It's a love story. But what's really cool is the only way to get the good end is to play through it completely once, learn something, and then use that information on a subsequent playthrough. And it is coded such that you can't look it up online, you can't cheat. You have to play it twice to get the good ending, because it's the only way for your character or the game to know that. So it's a really interesting device, and I thought it worked really, really well there.
Hands up.
All right, second to last question. Who wants it? Who wants it? All right, I see somebody in red is pointing there. Yes, you.
What do you think of games?
Go.
Finally.
Come on, go.
It's you.
You. Yes, you.
Get on with it.
Do it, Gregor.
Games where your character can't talk and they just kind of interact with people around them.
I'm sorry, I did not get the word back.
What do you think of games where your character can't talk, but they just kind of exist to deal with other people around them?
Oh, the silent protagonist.
Or
I like the silent protagonist. Once again, I like a character that I can imagine myself as, and that's the whole point of the silent protagonist.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, I see 2, 3 people pointing at you with their hand in the air with pink hair. Please give us our last question.
How do you feel about games where you have a sense of urgency but not a sense of like world saving? I'm sorry, the only thing I can think of right now is like don't starve, where you're just trying to keep yourself alive. But
I like it.
yeah, that
Yeah,
one too.
I want something, I want stakes that matter, but it doesn't have to be the end of the world. I don't have to stop the moon from crashing into the earth. That's fun. I like to do that sometimes. I don't have to do that every time. Catherine's a great example. And a stellar production, if you like weird horror puzzle games, please play Catherine. Another Afghan. That's one where the stakes is basically just your relationship. I mean, they have some stuff on top of it, gets supernatural horror at a point, but really the stakes are your relationship. And there are 6 endings to it. And it's very, very much small stakes, but small stakes that matter, that feel like they matter, that you're invested in and care about. And that's really the goal, I think, not so much, the weight of the stakes isn't important, how much they matter to you is important.
Don't starve and everybody's white.
How involved you feel with the character.
There are days when the narrative of my day is find a bathroom, find a bathroom, find a bathroom, find a bathroom. World to make me give a shit. Just tell me something's gonna happen that I care about. Make the characters good.
Give me a character I like. Give me a stake I can rest my hat on, no matter how big or how small. Give me the opportunity to make my own moments.
The story of my life right now is remain standing with splitting back pain. And
you'll be delighted to know that story has come to a close. Once again, Bob Shipman, Kirk D. Norman, Dr. Daniel Grotsky. You guys made this spectacular. You are a phenomenal audience. I want you all to stand up and please take a bow while we applaud you.